Wow! Your man the YB has some breaking news regarding Anthony Joshua, Eddie Hearn, and Sky Sports. It's all kicking off. So if you dons who don't know, or if you've been living somewhere on Mars, Eddie Hearn is no longer synonymous with Sky Sports. Eddie Hearn has now left Sky Sports, and Eddie Hearn has teamed up with DAZN, who are now in the UK. So it's Eddie Hearn DAZN against Sky Sports. Now the reason this is kicking off right now, politically speaking, is over Anthony Joshua. We know, as far as UK boxing goes, AJ is the jewel on the crown. That's just a fact. And to be honest with you, quite sad, but it's the truth, AJ really is UK boxing. Honestly. Without AJ in UK boxing, it's not the same, is it? Let's call a spade a spade. Now, we can argue about his performances, but I'm talking about in terms of pounds and pence. AJ is probably 10 times bigger. Think about it, let's do it mathematically here. AJ earns 50 million a fight, yeah? That's more. That's probably 10 times more the whole rest of the sport. Isn't it? In the UK, I'm talking about. Who else you got? Okay, Fury. He might make 10. Dillian might make 5. That's it. The rest of this little change. So AJ is multiples bigger than the whole of British boxing as a whole. So that's why this thing's so contentious. Anyway, this could just be what it is. Eddie Hearn cracks on with AJ. But that's not the case. One of my sources deep in Sky Sports has essentially made a statement that they believe, so my Sky Sports representative believes, that AJ is going to leave Eddie Hearn and DAZN and stay with them out of loyalty. Yeah? Sky Sports believe they will keep AJ out of the clutches of the new boxing broadcast rivals DAZN and therefore Eddie Hearn. The streaming service has already snapped up Matchroom promoter Eddie Hearn and his stable, with stars like Josh Warrington, Conor Benn and Katie Taylor fighting on the app this weekend in Leeds. Now, Eddie Hearn believes he's going to be able to leverage his long-running relationship with Anthony Joshua to keep him on an exclusive, the DAZN platform. But Sky Sports, my source at Sky Sports, believes AJ and his loyalty to Sky, bearing in mind Sky took him from zero to hero, Sky was the platform, they believe their loyalty, AJ's loyalty with Sky, will trump AJ's loyalty to Hearn. Now we don't know, what the thing is, we hear a lot about, Eddie Hearn, I was just on the phone to AJ, but you just don't know, do you? Sky is a corporation as such. We just don't know behind the scenes what really goes on. And the fact that Sky are making these claims, would they, like for example, we know boxing promoters talk hot air half the time, but the corporate dons at Sky Sports, they're not out there like that. So why would some of the corporate dons at Sky Sports suddenly be saying, we expect AJ to stay with us? Again, but YB, everyone's just talking SHIT. Well, it's unlikely in my opinion anyway. Could just be hot air. But this isn't promoter talk. We're not talking about Bob Arum here. We're talking about Sky executives making this claim. So ultimately the question becomes, do they know something we don't or not? That's the bottom line here. Does AJ... It comes down to relationships, and we do know it's the thing. And what makes it interesting for me is the fact that Sky are using certain words like loyalty. Why is that so relevant? Well, we're not talking about someone like Tyson Fury here, where he has no loyalty. Yeah, don't forget this. People have got a short memory. Tyson Fury started with Mick Hennessy. I'm never going to leave Mick. Him and Mick were best friends. And that really, to be fair, sorry to digress, but that really was telling of Fury's real personality. Back when Tyson Fury was with Mick Hennessy, I was a massive Fury fan. I didn't really think much of it, but now it makes sense. Fury said back in 2011. Oh, I'm never going to leave Mick Hennessy. He's the best thing ever. Oops. Theory has since left a whole bag of people. My point is, AJ, he loyal to a fault. He's loyal to the extent he's prepared to sacrifice his whole career to be loyal. Look at Rob McCracken. Yeah? So that's why, from my point of view, the fact we've got a Sky executive saying, AJ's going to stay with us because of loyalty, wow, that's scary. From an Eddie Hearn point of view, what do they know that we don't? Maybe it's nothing, maybe it's just hot air. But for me, yeah, as far as corporations go, why would a corporation or executives within a corporation say, oh, he's going to stay with us because of loyalty, and then you end up looking like a mug when he leaves you? Do you understand? There's no benefit to them. Unless they're trying to kind of power play, or unless they're trying to guilt trip AJ, if that makes sense. It'll be a bit awkward for them to say, oh, it'd be a bit awkward for them to say to AJ's face or to AJ's messages, oh, you better stay with us because of loyalty. That's a bit beggy. But what you could do is leak it to your man's the YB to run the story, and we know that AJ stay locked in to the YB's channel. So at this point, we just don't know. Now, what's one thing that's interesting, I did hear Eddie Hearn say, oh, AJ, pay-per-view's always going to be an option. I always took that as, oh yeah, well that means AJ will still be on Sky. But from what I'm understanding now, DAZN are going to run a pay-per-view model, as well, or a one-off pay-per-view event. Because this whole divergence between Eddie Hearn and Sky, yes, they left on relatively good terms, but in the last few days, it's kicking off a bit. For example, Johnny Nelson and a few Sky representatives said, oh, we don't need a headman. Eddie Hearn does too much talking, essentially. We're kind of glad to see the back of him. And Eddie Hearn's replied saying, oh, you know what I mean? So it's not, I don't think, well, as with any big split up, Sky, of course, have lost a big dude. They'd be lying if they said otherwise. Especially given how much loyalty Sky showed Eddie Hearn. Sky gave Eddie Hearn all the rights. Sky gave Eddie Hearn the key to boxing, essentially. Massive budget. Without that relationship, but then again, you can argue both ways. Because without Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren's been doing nothing in boxing for 20 years. And he stays doing nothing. So, it wasn't like they had much options. Although, what we know is Sky had the option not to involve themselves in boxing full stop. They got back into boxing with Eddie Hearn. But again, it's all business. Sky made money, Eddie Hearn made money. Touche, as such. Eddie Hearn moved on to make more money. But I guess Sky are feeling like, well, Sky got punked, essentially. Sky got punked. They got sidemanned. It just shows you how much lust Eddie Hearn has. He knows no bounds. But it's in a good way. I have to give him credit because I was going to do a video on Eddie Hearn soon because, guess what? Hughie Fury has now signed with Sky, but Eddie Hearn said Hughie Fury had 2 or 3 more fights on his contract with Eddie Hearn. But Peter Fury came to Eddie Hearn and said, Eddie, we want to go with Sky. Eddie Hearn said, well, you got 3 more fights. Peter Fury said, well, what fights really are you going to give Hughie Fury to elevate his career? And Eddie Hearn didn't really know. So, he's now released Hughie Fury, I assume for nothing. Now, who does that? Look at Dana White. Dana White, people can retire and Dana White will still enforce a contract. If you're a UFC fighter, yeah, and you retire and you want to go and do a boxing event, you ain't doing nothing. At best, you're going to cut Dana in on it. At best. If not, you ain't going to do it at all. That's Dana White. So I do have to credit Eddie Hearn. Yes, we can sit there and say, oh, he loves the money, but who don't? And also, his fighters always get paid. And he always makes it clear that he's the worker. He ain't trying to be no Don King or Bob Arum who dominates their fighters. So I do have to rate Eddie Hearn on that basis. That said, where does AJ go from here? We've got Sky Sports, big conglomerate, saying that they're confident AJ's going to stay with them. Eddie Hearn I'm not even sure he's blinking. I think and I can't even lie to you. Me personally, yeah, before I had one of my sources reach out to me and give me this news today, I thought it was a game, set and match. I just assumed that, yep, AJ's with Eddie Hearn and his own, that's the end of that. Now, I have heard, as I mentioned, that Eddie Hearn say, well, AJ will always, pay-per-view will always be an option for AJ. And I assumed it's going to be on his own. But now this rift between Sky's building up, and the fact that Sky have come out and said, AJ going to stay with us, I don't know what to say, people. It's going to be interesting, though. Well, not really to us, we're still broke, but I mean, it's interesting from AJ's point of view. Is he going to make 50 million or 55 million? One of them ones. But yeah, let me know what you, man, think on this one. Does AJ keep it a trill? So I'm thinking, actually, yeah, because AJ's a fighter in that sense, meaning that he will either be with Sky or he'll be with Eddie Hearn and DAZN, won't he? So I'm confused. Although Eddie Hearn has said, I'm always going to do what's best for my fighter. And I want to make it clear, I'm always working for AJ. So what I think Eddie Hearn's point of view is, yes, we'll always be open to bids from Sky, but I'm going to do my best to always outbid Sky. That's the only thing I can really conclude from all this. And Sky are basically doubling down, saying that, listen, if DAZN are charging $15, there's no way they're going to be able to offer the money we can offer on pay-per-view. But then what? Sky aren't talking about financial viability here. Sky didn't say, yep, AJ going to stay with us because we're going to pay him the most. They said, AJ's going to stay with us because of loyalty. That sounds suspect. That sounds like they're almost conceding, yeah, we're not going to be able to beat the money. Because then if I had a fighter, and I was confident we were going to win the money game, I'd say it. Listen, AJ ain't going nowhere because we got the money. We got the check. And he going to stay loyal kind of thing. For me personally, though, I'd be leading with the money. But then again, look at AJ's character. AJ's character, he doesn't necessarily maximise for money. Look at his trainer situation. He's got about 4 trainers. God knows how much he's dishing out to them. He's got 4 below average trainers. And he's paying all of them. Top whack, no doubt. So AJ isn't out here strategising, thinking, wait there a minute, let me just get one decent trainer in Shane McGuigan and be done with it. No, I'm going to get 3 goofy dons who have no resume and perform super scary. The reason AJ's done that, the reason AJ had to have 3 trainers is because of loyalty. He refused to sack Rob McCrappen, despite pathetic performances, which shows you AJ is super subservient and super what you'd call loyal. I'm not even calling it loyal. Loyalty is a good thing. If I'm in a set, or if I'm in a herd of sheep and they all start jumping off the cliff and I follow them because I'm super duper loyal, that's not loyalty. I don't know what you call it, but that's whatever it is. It's goofiness. So AJ is goofy to a fault, 100% confirmed. I guess it just depends how deep these alleged loyalty ties go. Because what we know for a fact is, if AJ's loyal enough to this particular individual at Sky, he ain't going nowhere. The same way he won't go nowhere with Rob McCrappen. Or he may find, as we've seen in the Rob McCrappen example, maybe he'll find a way to satisfy both. I don't think AJ likes conflict, truth be known. I think he doesn't like the idea. I think he likes to just kind of satisfy everyone. He's not very selfish. He's unselfish to a fault, I'd say. But let's see how it plays out.